We are a country of the rule of law. We live up to our international obligations, and we trust our courts to do the right thing.
Welcome back to Power and Politics in the Power Panel. Brad Levine, Yolande James, Rachel Curran, and JP Tasker. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just was there answering questions about why Canada agreed to arrest Chinese tech giant Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou. The U.S. wants to extradite her. So, Yolande, I'll start with you. What kind of quagmire does the government find itself in? We obviously heard over the weekend China threatening to retaliate. The government was pretty insistent, and Minister Freeland spoke today as well, sort of saying, this is the rule of law. Like, we don't have a choice. This is how it goes.
Well, the government's in a tough spot. There's no doubt about it. I think China's made it pretty clear that they're not happy, and in their way of letting that being known, it's easier to put pressure right now on Canada than to retaliate directly on the United States. That being said, given that, as the Prime Minister said and Christopher Freeland said today, I mean, the arrest has been made. I can't imagine a scenario where the government at this point would say, well, okay, well, we're just going to intervene right now and stop this whole issue and just release her. That's not an option under our system. And I think part of the issue has to be that things, from what I understand, without being a specialist on the issue, things don't quite work the same way in China. So it's difficult for them to get that. That being said, I think I did note that Christopher Freeland insisted on the fact that the CFO, she has confidence, will be treated very well with respect to the law, and I think that point has to be reiterated. But is there going to be is this good news for Canada? No, and the retaliation on economically is obviously imminent. What that will be, I don't know, but it's not going to be good.
Well, they're essentially trying to shame us into releasing her, right, by invoking, human rights complaints. It's because we put her in leg irons and she's got high blood pressure and she has trouble sleeping. We can't just keep her in prison, and we should release her right away, and we promise she'll stay there in Canada, but she won't be a flight risk. I mean, this is the last country on earth we should really be looking to for human rights advice, right? This is a country that has recently imprisoned 1 million Uyghur Muslims and put them in re-education camps, right? So let's not take any lessons from China on what we should do with respect to people who might have violated the law. Also importantly, China's taken some Canadians into prison. Let's not forget about that. Like Kevin Garrett, who was essentially a missionary from British Columbia, was held in prison for months on end with no explanation. Essentially, they called him a spy and said that, he was violating national security laws. It took a lot of work on the part of this government to actually get him out eventually. But China's no good actor on this file, right? They are a frequent human rights abuser, and we should really not even feel bad, frankly, about this, because we're fulfilling international obligations that we have to the United States to hold people who might have violated U.S. law to face court in the U.S.
Maybe we shouldn't feel bad, but should we be, I guess, have heightened awareness about what that retaliation might look like? I mean, there are extreme economic ties between our two countries. Ones that the government, until this happened, were saying they wanted to expand the
But do we just flout, the rule of law because we're worried about some trade deals? I'm not sure that's the way to do things.
Well, that is a big discussion on many trade deals right now. Rachel, what do you think?
Well, I think we almost certainly arrested her under pressure from the U.S., and we're now caught squarely in this battle between the U.S. and China, which is huge, and China should be
Markets
focused.
are up and down.
Well, China should be focused on the U.S. Because it really was at their request that this individual was arrested. But we're an easier target, and so I think Yolande's absolutely correct. We're going to see retaliation in some form, whether that's economic or whether that's rounding up Canadians. And it's unfortunate, but I think we will be the target of some kind of retaliation. Our relationship with China has really been on a downward trajectory for the last year or so. But this arrest is a huge deal. I mean, Huawei has been described as the Apple of China, and this lady has been described as the Ivanka Trump of Huawei.
She's the daughter of the founder, I should say.
Yeah. So this is a huge deal. It's high profile in China, and they're not just going to let this one pass by.
Is there any way for Canada, Brad, to mitigate the collateral damage that might happen because of this?
Well, it's also frustrated by the fact that her initial hearing was for Friday, and then it was held over the entire weekend, allowing the story a lot more breathing space. If it was, in and out one day, we would have ripped Canada would have had the Band-Aid ripped off, and we would have had to deal with whichever superpower we wanted to upset the most that day. Whether if we couldn't send her to the States, the Americans are going to be mad at us, and if we do send her to the States, China's going to be mad at us. So as Rachel points out, this is a no-win situation. But whatever the court says, we have to stand strong to say, look, to whomever is the person upset that day, whichever country's upset that day, we're just going to have to stand tall. And this speaks to a bigger thing. Huawei is obviously looking to get into the 5G network in this country. They are moving in aggressively into this market. We've already seen places like Australia, New Zealand say that they don't want any part of Huawei. This is all wrapped up together in it. And so this is one skirmish within, I think, a much larger tangle that we're going to have with China over the coming weeks and months.
And that's an interesting point you bring up, because the government is reviewing whether or not to let Huawei into, to let them set up a 5G network. But like you said, JP and Brad, you highlighted the number of our allies who are saying don't do this. And I wonder, Yolande, how long does the government have before it has to actually make a call on this? And I should say that we had Scott Jones, who heads up this cybersecurity, who's kind of doing something has a big part to do with the review, and he refused to give us any idea of what the timeline for that review, if it would be made public when it was completed or anything.
Well, I would imagine the government will make their announcement when that information, when they're ready to. But given that our allies have already, as Brad just mentioned, been very categoric in saying no, it does put pressure and a certain solidarity with respect to the decision that Canada will make. And I think that this discussion, whether it's Huawei or other telecommunication companies, it's in the era of our times as we're questioning what exactly they're doing with our information and how that's being used. So Canadians, I believe, are more and more sensitive to that. So the government, when they do make their announcement, have to be obviously pretty clear as to how and why.
Yeah, do we have any choice? I mean, are you jeopardizing your intelligence sharing information for relationship? I'm sorry, for example, with your allies if you choose differently? Then maybe you aren't. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're part of a network called the Five Eyes Intelligence Network, and 3 of those eyes so far, Australia, the UK, New Zealand, have said they're banning Huawei from their networks, and even the UK, the fourth eye, is backing off from Huawei a bit as well. So I don't see how we have any other choice but to say no. And of course, we'll make that decision independently. But I'm not sure how the decision can be anything other than we're going to impose a ban as well, which may just be the final nail in the coffin of our relationship with China. I'm not sure how it could get much worse at this point.
Huawei obviously sees Canada, though, as an important market because they are the sponsor of Hockey Night in Canada, right? So they think that, this is an important market for them because they want to build a foothold in a Western country to show they can be a legitimate business operation beyond sub-Saharan Africa, right, or China and places like that.
Brad, I'll give you the final word.
Let's not undersell what we offer. We're afraid of what China can do to Canada, but they want our stuff, regardless of this skirmish or even the 5G network. They want our natural resources. They want our oil. There's lots of people to buy that from, but they also, Canada's also got a lot for them. So, instead of, I know that they're a lot bigger and their economic muscle is significant, but let's not undersell our ability that they also want the stuff that we offer.
Okay, stay with us. The Power Panel will be back for a final round right after this.